Well, I mean, yeah, the idea of you know, taking the what is already written and giving it to someone else to do is of course an intriguing thing to contemplate and to do, and sometimes it will fall flat on its face, and sometimes it will work, and so much would depend on the. In this case, we're talking about a translation into another language. I mean, the translator of a book, a novel, or is as important as the original author.
We tried some of the scripts in German and failed abysmally, but we were told the translations were dreadful. Now, there's no way we can tell, but one assumes, because of the success in Sweden and Norway of Fleksnes and Galton, we assume that the translations are brilliant, otherwise they wouldn't have lasted. And I must say that I enjoy looking at them, because, as I say, they sound as if they'd been written by Ibsen.
And
they're very artistic, it sounds.
The other element, of course, is again down to Bo in finding and recognising that Rolf Vedersen would be the character to do this work. So, and that's not taken away from Rolf anything, because Rolf does it brilliantly. I mean, I can watch Rolf Vedersen and laugh without knowing one word of what he is saying, but he is a funny man. So you have that wonderful combination of a guy being naturally funny and a marvelous translation. So put them together, then you have a hit.
The interesting thing to us was how amazingly similar the Fleksnes character, Rolf Vedersen, is physically to Hancock. You know, I mean, if you see a photograph of the two side by side, I mean, they could come from the same family. It's quite remarkable. And I'm sure that was accidentally. I mean, obviously, Rolf wasn't cast because he looked like. It was just that sort of physique, and you know, and the same characteristics. You know, the pretentiousness, the lack of success with women. As I say, the intellectual, a man with no real education, but trying like mad to pretend, persuade people that he's someone to be reckoned with in this world. I always remember coming over to Sweden many years ago, and I was on the boat and talking to somebody, and they said, it's a Swedish chap, we got 70. And he said, well, what are you going to Sweden for? I said, well, I'm going to watch a recording of some shows that my colleague and I wrote. He said, oh, really, which show? I said, Fleksnes. He said, you didn't write Fleksnes. I said, oh, yes. He said, no, it's impossible. Everybody up here thinks that it was originally, it must have been written by Norwegians or Switzerland. Bo Hermansen is the man who is to blame for that. No doubt about it. I mean, he's taken our material and somehow turned it into Norwegian. So really, we're superfluous in it. No, I was coming over on a boat once, and I couldn't believe that English people had written these shows, because they were so typically Scandinavian. In the case of Fleksnes, Norwegian, and with Albert and Herbert, Swedish. I couldn't believe that we wrote it.
You are here now because you're bringing Fleksnes to a final episode. How does that feel to have written this episode so many years after?
Well, this is the first episode that we've written sort of, directly for. I mean, all the other shows have been translations of stuff we've written for other people. So there's that interesting part to it. It's just a shame that it's the last one.
I'm waiting to see. I understand that there is a possibility of the original shows being repeated first, and then this be interesting to see. I mean, the original ones are about 20 years or even longer, even older.
30 years.
30 years ago. It'd be lovely to see the 30-year-old Rolf 30 years ago, and then the next week you see him as he is now. Lovely idea.
If I'd known they were going to last so long, I'd have taken more trouble. But the whole thing about and the good thing, I suppose, that we never thought they were anything other than a show for that week. And if it wasn't very good that week, we say, oh, well, never mind, it's another one next week. We did the best that we could possibly do as writers, and we were learning as well. But we just did our best. We didn't try and be pretentious. We didn't think all these will last for infinity. So that's what makes it even more wonderful, that they have lasted, and I just hope they continue to last.
So it is wonderful. Ray said if they'd have lasted, if we know they're going to last this longer, we would have taken more care. But we didn't have time to take. We were doing 40 shows a year, so we just type them out, the end, and that was it. And we didn't have time to improve or go over them. We used to quickly read through and alter, but we had to get on with next week.
But one episode that is just as fresh as it was when it was written, and actually because not more than 3 weeks ago, they were screaming in the papers that they needed more blood donors. That is a special episode.
The blood donor, or I believe it was called the Blutgiveren.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's still episode, isn't it? You still go everywhere. You see, blood donor weeks all over. I mean, in France, the Donna du Sang every travel around the countryside.
But that was a show that more or less wrote itself as well. Once you thought of the idea, and because thinking of the idea in that particular case of him being a rare blood group appealed to his sense of importance as well. But then cutting himself and going back to the hospital, and there was only 1 pint of the blood there, and that's what he gave the day before. And the doctor said it wasn't really worth you coming, was it? And he said, well, if I hadn't come, you wouldn't have had any. Now where would I have been?
That was one of our best scripts in terms of construction. It was a perfect beginning, middle, and end. It came to full circle. It was very, very, very satisfying. And of course, jeopardy again. You see, fear. The fear of going into hospital, needles. It was all the undercurrent of it.
We never knew how we were going to end the show, except that one.
Quite often.
We just get to page 23 or whatever it was, and you think, right, okay, now what do we do now? And most times we were lucky enough to come up with an idea that looked as though that is what we had been writing towards right from page 1. But it was purely thought of at the last possible moment.
You can always tell a Galton and Simpson ending, because quite often it had very little to do with what went on before. It was manufactured, on the last page. But the art was, as Ray said, the art was to make it look as if we thought it would page it. But with the blood donor, or the Blutgiveren, we did think of the ending after about page 2. So then you can, you know what you're working towards, and you can write it that much quicker.
But what is good about the videos or repeats is that it brings a new generation into the scene, which is it's very good. It's very good. They think that you like it. It still works. It works for you. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Why is the character popular? A, I'm delighted, and B, I can only think because it's timeless in as much as the type of personality he is has always existed, long before us, long before these shows. I mean, probably go back to the cavemen, and there was always one of them who was a bit pretentious. One of them was doing the painting. What do you think about that? And the other ones are probably jealousy, and some of them were better with women than the others. So, I mean, it's just really human nature, which never changes.
If you take one English author called Charles Dickens, he existed in Victorian time, and he, more than anyone else in the world, I think, created comic characters, and they were funny then, and they're funny now, and because he was absolutely brilliant at doing that, and I'm sure he would be like the authors who I read, who when asked to explain comedy, can do it, and they do it very well. They're very what's the word? Not brainy. Erudite. Yes, they're very erudite answers they give, and penetrating. You don't have to agree with them, but they look good on paper, and they certainly sound good. No one has actually ever explained comedy to any satisfaction, but a lot of people can go a long way in sounding as though they can define comedy, and which I thought, well, I just can't even begin to tell you what it's about. It's all you know is that it's something instinctive, and the only thing you can do is if it makes you laugh, then you hope that it'll make other people laugh.
Absolutely. You write for yourself first of all. You write for yourself. You can't worry about, are they going to like it out there? You write what you think is funny. Just hope to God everybody else thinks it's funny as well. People sometimes say they don't write. The people have nostalgic attitudes. Don't write things like that today. Yesterday's comedy is better than today's. Point being is that people forget that years ago there was just as much rotten. There was as much rotten stuff as there was good stuff. It's only the good stuff that lasts. And I think you'll find in 30 years' time the same thing will apply to things that are going on today. Some of it will live, and some of it won't. I don't think there's any great analysis to be made. Ray's mentioned one author that is still widely read, certainly in English, Charles Dickens. And the times and things he was writing about that don't exist anymore, at least not to the same extent. But I'm sure he will be read forever. Shakespeare's lasted 450 years, so not I'm suggesting we're in that category, but
or he writes jokes even.
We're better joke writers than he is.
Yeah. And better dancers.
Better dancers, yeah. Hitler was a good dancer.